Hi, I'm Seamless, and today I'm going to talk to you about Patcher. So you've seen me use it if you follow my tutorials a lot, and this is what Patcher is. I've loaded it in as a generator, or a channel in this case, because that's what these things are referred to in the sequencer. They're called channels. You can also load it as an effect, and what you can do with it will be pretty obvious, but I'm going to do the generator just because this can do the most things. So Patcher is basically a modular routing environment, more or less. And its purpose in life is to be able to make basically things like effects and routing and stuff like that much more visually simple. The way that it works is if you right click it, you get these options. You have from FL to FL basically. So, and right now there's nothing happening. And if you load this in an effects insert, you get the same sort of it's the same sort of, I can't find it, there it is. This business, but this actually means no audio is coming through. So if there was anything in the effects insert, there would be no audio. You'd have to do that. You click and drag, and you create these sort of links to things. That's how Patcher works. So in here, I'm gonna add, let's say, a citrus. Let's do that. Bam. Now there's a citrus. Blah, 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 blah. I can play it like I would anything normally. Now, there is a bunch of cool things that you can put in here. I don't really know a lot. I don't know like every single thing about everything that happens. But basically, I'm going to give you the kind of overview about it, because this is still pretty new. And, some of it's a little unintuitive. But that's how you add in plugins. Now, right now, I'm going to tell you how you deal with presets, because it's a bit different. If you right-click it, you get the Save Preset button and a bunch of other options, but that's how you save a preset. Also, like every other Save Preset icon, if you want to clone something, you can click and drag, and then it'll actually bring in another one, a clone of the same one. And if you double-click it, you bring us to this editor window, which is a lot like Reason if you think about it. Because when I add in extra stuff, like say a chorus, it'll appear in the list, like so. And then if I add more stuff, and the list has the scroll, if I double click on the thing, it'll scroll the list until we see whatever it is actually in there. Of course, you're also able to rename things. So you have more visual organization about what you're doing. But in the editor window is also where you access presets. So as you see, this drop down arrow just collapses things. It doesn't actually bring you to a menu. In order to get the presets, you have to use these arrows here. Now, the arrows will scroll through presets, but if you right click it, it'll bring you to the preset window. At the moment, there is not tree mode. You get just the big ass list. And the user presets will appear in the first list here. So it's not gonna ever like be out of view or anything. But yes. That's how you handle presets. Now I'm gonna talk to you about how you handle automation. This is another sort of weird, not quite intuitive kind of deal. There's 2 or 3 ways. The most direct way, the normal way that you're used to doing it in FL, is if you want to automate a parameter, you right click it, and you click automate, create automation clip. However, you notice how that menu is that's not there. However, if you click on activate and then do it again, then you get the same list. But once you activate it, you go back into the map view, you see this little red dot appears. This red dot, like the yellow and the green lines, can be linked to controllers. By default, Patcher opens up with this surface thing. And surface, what this is an instance of the control surface, which is not just a Patcher-based thing. You can actually open control surface as a normal effect plugin on its own. Boop. And it's the same exact thing. Like the control surface of regular, say you can add in, different icons and stuff like that. Knobs, X, Ys, and sliders, and this thing will get its own thing eventually because it's a very much more in-depth kind of deal. But if you go back in the map, you see once I add in the X, Y, you get these 2 red dots, and these red dots indicate the X and the Y linkable controllers. So that if I did this, bam, it's now linked to that controller. This would also be similar to how if you wanted to add in something like a peak controller. Oop. You have an in and then an out, but like the way the peak controller works is that it reads inputs and then uses the input to create controller data So we don't actually need the output audio, but I do need to go to it, and I need to say, right click it, and you get inputs and outputs. And one of the output options is controllers. And then we have peak LFO, peak and LFO, which are the options that you get in a normal controller linking option for the peak controller. So now if I wanted the peak controller to control, say, Y, I could now do this. Now, you might not be able to tell. Well, that was interesting. That doesn't make a lick of sense. Oh, it's because it's going into Citrus. Yeah. So if I like activated, say, a depth of chorus or something, then I can link it. Yeah. So that the peak controller can't be linked back into its own plugin, obviously. That makes sense. I would create controller feedback. That'd be weird, wouldn't it? That threw me for a loop for a second. See, this is why I held off on doing this video. But yes, so that's how you would use something like the peak controller. Now, I mentioned the green, the yellow, and the red lines. What does this mean? The yellow lines indicate audio linking, and the green lines indicate MIDI linking. If you right-click the main FL in here, you go to Outputs and Events, you get this giant list of every MIDI port ever. So, like, really, if you wanted to, you could use, like, say, a MIDI out. Do that. MIDI out. And link it to port 1. Well, actually, what port? Actually, this is not a port, is it? No, because it's just notes. There, port 1. And link that to Citrus. So you can link more than one thing into a single thing like that. And now the MIDI is controlling the Citrus. So I actually did this in one of the 30K tutorials where I linked a bunch of MIDI things into one patcher which had more than one thing. So that's how I controlled individual things, but I kept it all in the same patcher environment. And you might be thinking, well, why would you do that? Why not just have separate things? And you could do that. I mean, it's true. It was mostly just an organizational failure on my part. However, patcher has no limits as how much stuff you can have. Not like, a normal effects slot where you got 8 effects. Patcher does not have that limit. It's important also to note in these drop-down menus, if you click, it'll select whatever you clicked on and then close the menu. But if you right-click, you can actually click on more than one thing and it won't close the menu. Good times. Now, the other weirdness I wanted to talk about was audio routing for certain things. So, for example, let's say Vocodex. Now, the way that I tend to do Vocodex stuff in a patcher is that I'll add in a harmer. This is just what I do. This is what I like doing. So let's say a Citrus is my carrier, right? I want Citrus to be the carrier, so I want harmony to be the modulator. Now, normally what I would do is I would link inside harmer. I put it in an audio clip into the resynthesis window, and then I'll control that, and that's so that whenever I hit a note, it would hit that, and then that would be how I do modulation. That's what I would do. So, but I still do the route, the Citrus signal and the harmer signal into a Vocodex. So the way that you do it in normal FL is that you route them both into a channel, and then in Vocodex you determine what input is what. However, with these two links going into this one thing still counts as one input. And in Vocodex world, this would count as the 0 input, which is the actual combined audio input of the one channel. So in order to do this, what you have to go to inputs and audio. You have to add something. Now we have 2 extra inputs. So these inputs, I'm actually going to route the Citrus and the harmer into that. Now I'll go into Vocodex. If you right click it, we see we have input 1 and input 2. Those are the input 1s and 2 that we did. And the 0 input is, as I said before, the combined input, which actually right now there's nothing going in there, so it's not a thing. So we have input 1 and then input 2, and if I were to play notes, it would they're now both being routed correctly into the vocoder. That's how that works. The same is true for something like the limiter. If you wanted to do sidechain compression, you'd have to add in additional inputs for that to work. And also the same thing is true for things that have multiple outputs, like say an FPC. You'd have to create additional outputs. By default, you see you have all these send options because that's what a lot of these plugins do by default, is that they have links to the 4 sends of the FL mixer, so that's what they call the outputs. However, those are mainly just there. They're just named that. They're still like the sequential outputs for things, like the FBC, for example. Now, you might be thinking, okay, well, how do I bypass stuff? Like, I have a citrus going into a chorus. Well, what if I wanted to bypass it? Well, you might be thinking, well, how do I do that with this? Well, if you mouse over this, you notice that there's this little line, this wheel that shows up. This is pretty much just how much volume is coming out. You can't automate this, but if you right click, you can mute it, and then you can also just do that. But if I wanted to bypass something, if I wanted to have like the dry audio or something coming through, let's say I wanted this phaser to be only applied to one part of the chorus thing, well, I would just create another output like that. So now I have phaser coming out, and then also parallel the chorus coming out, and then I can mix and blend and parallel and all that good stuff. Now you're probably thinking, well, how do I automate volume? Like, how does that work now? Well, some plugins have like, volume stuff, like the Citrus has volume options and some things like that, but then that's, not the greatest, especially if you're going, if that's the beginning of like a thing, you want to go to the end of a thing. So basically the best way to do that would be to use another plugin to do the volume automation. You have various options, like, for example, you could open up a limiter and just like turn the ceiling all the way up and the attack and the head all the way off and all that good stuff, and then you can automate the gain. That's straight volume input, that kind of thing. You can have that on one thing or another. Like, say this was going to be like distortion or something. Whereas wave shaper, whoop, it's distortion, and then that goes out. So then I can now automate the volume level of distortion. Of course, the distortion has this is a bad example because the wave shaper actually has a post level, so that you can automate the level of that individually. But say this was a plugin that doesn't have direct volume automation, this is more or less how you would do that. And you might be thinking, well, it's kind of messy and all that good stuff, and you'd be right. But remember, we have no limits. We don't have to worry about running out of effect space or really being conservative about what effects we're using. I also had noticed if I make it bigger or smaller, it actually scrunches up so you can see everything. It's kind of handy. Yeah. So with Patcher, you can do some pretty absurd and complex things, and you won't, like I said, run out of effect space. Like here I did all this kind of like parallel phaser stuff and chorus and whatever, and then wave shaping and all this good stuff. It's also this makes layering way easy, because a thing that I do commonly is like there was a way to do it in Vocodex, but say that I wanted to have like a sub come out to go to the main out, I could link this here. Actually, instead of doing that, let's add an EQ. Do that, link that there, put this here, and then say, okay, now this is going to be a loop pass, steep one, and then boop, now it's a sub. And so now if I were to silence everything but that, this would be just the sub low one that's coming out, and then there it goes. It goes like that. And then of course I can link it all together with a compressor of some kind. I don't know, Maximus maybe. This list confuses me sometimes because it shows you effects and generators in the same like window, so that sometimes kind of screws with my head. Yeah, but you might also notice the fact that I have the generators, the effects, and the compressor all coming out just on a generator. Like, this is basically just a channel. This isn't actually routed to a mixer insert yet. So you can really contain just about whatever you want in a single patcher. If you really felt like it, you could make a whole song inside Patcher. You can make your whole master chain, your whole effects routing, all the side chaining, the limiting, like all that stuff. You can do all that in Patcher. It also makes certain things easy, like this, like frequency splitting. Like I have my sub routed now in the middle versus everything else that's happening. And if I want to be really, really clever, I could on top of like say this, I could come in here and say, all right, I want this to be a high pass, and make it steep around where the low pass is. Yeah, like I'm not being super amazing about it. So now the main sound is being high passed, and then here comes the low pass in there, so that like this is completely super dry, not doing anything, and it's not being vocoded with it, whatever, all that stuff. Like this is coming out, and that's like that. Even though this is the carrier, this is the modulator, so I'm basically putting out the modulator's bass, but that's what I've got. You know what I'm getting at. You know what I'm showing here. That's the point. This is the point of Patcher, because this would be a obscenely complicated like mixer based stuff. Like, how many would this require for every individual like parallel thing? That's a whole nother mixer insert and routing and the vocodecs and like the wave shaping and the bypassing and then the sub reinforcement, all that stuff. That's all extra inserts. And this is not even in an insert. We're not even in. We have not actually gone to the master or the mixer rather. This is going straight to the master. Yep. Good times. Hee. And actually, this is pretty cool because if I look at the inputs here, the audio inputs that are happening in here, these are all the other mixer inserts. So when for example, if I was in mixer insert 1, let's get rid of whatever there may be here, and then I go to inputs. We have the ability to link to any of the other inserts so that from within Patcher, we can route to other things. Of course, we would need to also route in the mixer. So to be like, okay, this is going in there. And yeah, cool. And this is how you would do like sidechaining to other things, like other Patcher inserts, if you're not actually going to do everything inside one Patcher and stuff. Those are just options. This is what Patcher gives you, is just options. All the options. Everything you could dream of in terms of what you want to actually accomplish. You're not limited as hard as you are with the mixer inserts, and you have all the space. You have like whatever you can think to do. This to that, that to this for all the good time. You just have to kind of wrap your mind around like the different architecture, like the idea of how the presets work, the idea of how controller linking works, and the idea of how audio linking in inputs and outputs works, and that kind of stuff. Also, how bypassing works or doesn't work, and automating like output volume and stuff like that. Because you can do all the things you need to do. You just need to kind of acclimate to how it's done inside Patcher. And there are a bunch of other options. Like there's a couple of like voice effects and things that I'm not super duper versed with. I don't even know where the plugins are for that, but look at the manual for that kind of stuff, because there are things in there like key limiters and like ARPs and stuff like that. And it was pretty neat. It is handy and cool. And so Control Surface came out with Patcher. Like I said, this is a separate plugin that you can use outside of Patcher. But there are people actually in the ImageLine forums that make whole plugins with Patcher. Like they're basically just aggregating everything that's going on in the mapping and then linking it to this. And this thing, okay, this is how you do this. This is how you make a sound. And then you have like you can add like different parameters and knobs and stuff, and be like, okay, so I'll just label these, and like being the important parameters, the ones that actually do things inside Patcher. This is what these are for. And so then you don't have to go in here and be like, okay, I want to like map X and Y to here, this, all this, that, and then map like these things. You can do that, and then you can just control them directly from up here. And then of course you have to activate them to be able to automate them. And then you get these dots again. And then you can, and then when you do that, you can automate them, and then you can just use it like this is the plugin. Like this is what you're looking at, not the mappy mess with all the editors. Although I've found that like I haven't really had a huge problem dealing with like this vertical sort of element. And I mean, like I said, if you're used to how Reason works, then this isn't going to be a new thing for you. Yes. So this is pretty much the basics of Patcher. And then recently ImageLine came out with Mini Host Modular, which is basically a standalone version of this with additional functionality that I'm not super familiar with. But if you have any questions about any of this, let me know and I'll try to answer it. And I also implore you to read the manual. I probably should have read it more when I tried to link the Peak controller to Citrus itself. Yeah, it didn't work. But yes. So if you have any questions, let me know. And as usual, have a nice day.